Hey guys, Tarke here, and I'm just going to run a few chill maps on my Magma Orb Sire of Shards character, and also just let you guys know I'm currently locked outside of my Twitch account, so feels bad, man. Shouldn't take too long. Basically what's happened is for some reason it's logged me out, and that's fine. I've got two-factor authentication, all that stuff. I was pretty sure I updated my mobile number when I got my new phone. Apparently I didn't, question mark, question mark, question mark. And now I can't log back in. So I'm waiting to hear back from I'm waiting to hear back from Twitch so I can then stream. But in all honesty, the timing kind of works because I only had a infusion earlier this morning. Well, it's 4 in the morning Tuesday. On Monday, I had infusion, which knocks me the fuck out. I then came home, slept, and woke up a few hours ago, which is why I'm now awake at 4 in the morning trying to stream and then ended up making YouTube videos. So, probably expect me to have my Twitch account back in order. Hopefully not much longer than a day, but it might take me a day to get back into the swing of things anyway, what with my body getting used to the infusion stuff. So maybe it will work out, but it's just pretty annoying. So, yeah. Bay class will be Saturday coming on my channel, assuming I'm able to stream. So you have that to look forward to. I haven't really been playing much PoE at all in the last few days. We're only level 84. I did get my Uber knocked out, so that's kind of chilly. So we just get to like face tank things. As long as we don't get one shot, then everything kind of just works quite well on this character. I did swap one of my blasphemies around. I was previously doing an offensive blasphemy. I'm now running a blasphemy enfeeble, since I haven't got my Comb's Heart yet. So I was like, well, let's just make it so we don't get one shot, and then when we have more HP, we can then swap into a more offensive setup. And also, I don't really need the extra damage at the moment, so having a little bit of extra defense is always kind of nice. And, yes, one thing I have started doing since I'm running a Belly of the Beast until I can afford my combs is I have a random floating 5-link. And in that floating 5-link, I've got a max level cast and damage taking golem setup, because I hate golem managements. And then I also have a efficacy increased duration Val haste, which is something I can just highly recommend. Stop moving around, you bellend. Stand still. And the thing which is just kind of nice about that is it means that you just have a very long duration Val haste setup, which is just kind of cool. So if you do have any random floating links and you don't, oh, what should I link into this? Just keep in mind that, yeah, you can link efficacy into either like cast and damage taken immortal cools or into Val skills, because it does give just a tiny bit more skill effect duration, which is rather nice. Other major-ish changes I've made on this character, I was previously rocking a fairly shitty +2 fire 6-link staff. I've actually swapped that out for a not Sire of Shards, Pledge of Hands, which is what I currently have in my offhand. It's only a 5-link, but I just find that's a little bit better. I've also tried messing around with a few different gem setups. I was running Immolate for a while. Immolate on paper should be really good since it gives a bunch of flat fire damage to ignited enemies. This is a crit build which hits quite rapidly, so I was like, oh, that seems like amazing. But I just found it really wasn't performing all too well. I also don't like the fact that it's kind of, the first hit is weak because you don't have them ignited yet. So I didn't like it that much for general map clear, and then for bossing, it just still felt a bit iffy for some reason. So for bossing, I'm instead running Elemental Focus, which obviously you can't use Ele Focus if you're running Immolate, and that just seems like a much nicer thing in general. And having that, and then the level 30 Spell Echo, of course, from the Pledge of Hands, and the main thing which I actually really like, and the thing which I found quite awkward about my previous setup, was the mana. As you saw with Malagaro then, when the bosses move around, because Magma Orb is quite aim intensive, like you have to be shooting in a particular way. Before it was a bit iffy. I could only like afford like 2 casts roughly of my previous setup, and if I wasn't leeching from those 2 casts, I would and then if I'm then that means I'm not doing any damage, which means I'm not leeching, which is obviously very dangerous for a Val packed leech build, because if you're doing no damage and not having any form of regen because you have no leech, then you're just gonna fall the fuck over. So that's another quite nice thing about having the Pledge of Hands setup, because it has a bunch of increased mana built into it. So now when I weapon swap to my other setup, I can do something like 5 or 6 casts before ooming. So if I oom myself on single target, then I've done something very wrong in that situation. So that's kind of nice. But otherwise, the character's performing rather nicely. And there's some things which I quite like about the way this works and don't like. So one of the things which is both very strong and very weak with Berserker is the way that Magma Orb actually functions. So there's a slight delay in between the first bounce where you're not leeching. You'll see sometimes I like face tank a pack, and there's this brief window of me taking damage before I leech up. Now, that is quite scary, and it's something you need to just play around. But it's also kind of works in your favor in the fact that you do have delayed leech. So because Magma Orb just keeps bouncing once it starts doing its own thing, don't want to curse him, otherwise I'll kill myself. It means that you have like a fairly constant supply of incoming leech, even long after you've... So like you can attack, and then each bounce it keeps leeching after. So like if you get stunned, if you get frozen, or if you just happen to like go for a walk or whatever, you still have that like passive healing incoming, which is actually really, really tasty. But there is just the drawback that you are initially quite weak, and that's also why I'm not running slower projectiles on my bossing setup in my 5-link. I will go back to running it in my 6-link, but currently I found that I could overlap the damage enough anyway that it wasn't that crucial, and actually having the slower projectiles made me quite vulnerable, because when you have a bit of a shoddy HP pool, which I currently do, I'm planning for like 7k plus once I have my combs and more points invested, more strength, etc., then you don't mind being slightly vulnerable. But when you have a pretty shitty HP pool, you don't want to have this like increased down period of no leech and no damage, because you're just asking for something terrible to happen to you. So that's just something that is worth considering for anyone else who's currently either playing this build or considering doing this build in the future. And also one thing, I probably should have just been doing the pledge setup for this whole map. When you are in the very linear setups like this, then the power of the Sire of Shards seems kind of like, well, why would you ever use that? It's in the more open setups that it feels particularly good. Now, do I have any shaped dunes? No. Do I have any good layouts? This will do it. So for stuff like shaped dunes, this feels great. You can basically just run straight down the middle and you clear all of the sides without faster projectiles. If you run faster projectiles, then you clean up everything insanely well. It's also really nice for stuff like breaches. If you have a breach in an open area, you can literally just stand in the middle, not even move, and you clear a full 360 breach. Like, you can clear up to 2 screens away very, very easily. So if there's anyone with Zana level 8 already, it's amazing. This is actually a very similar playstyle to, like, EK Nova. Now, obviously, EK Nova, Scaffer a retard, obviously EK Nova has the advantage of shield charge instead of staff setups. You can do a shield charge setup with this kind of gameplay, but you obviously don't have the full 360 since you're not using a Sire of Shards. But my point being is, you get like a much larger range Nova style thing, and it's just kind of cool. It's something worth considering. I also think the single target might be better in a fully fleshed out Magma Orb build than a fully fleshed out EK build, just because I'm pretty sure it's got better top end once you invest into all the appropriate stuff. So yeah, for any like softcore dudes who enjoy the EK Nova playstyle, maybe do this with Queen of the Forest so you still get to move fast, and then you kind of just get like a max range version, which just feels a little bit different. A lot of people were farming the hell out of like Primordial Pool Sexanted, like Wins had a version of this build last league, and it's really good for that kind of thing. So it's just about having enough movement speed that you can offset the limitations of using a staff. But here, for example, it shows it quite well, where you kind of get to just run sort of down the middle and you clear everything out. And again, this is not using faster proj in my links, and this isn't using something like what do you call it, dying stun, etc. So that was like a pretty rough clear, but I only had 30 monsters remaining, and that was with me not really paying attention to the route I was going. So if you're actually like paying attention to what you're doing, you can make your runs very, very, very efficient when you actually click inside the maps correctly. So yes, now the main goals that I have for this character going forward, once I get my comb sword and my HP a little bit better, is I need to get my Atlas fully set up properly for mapping. Currently I've been relying on other people's stuff because I haven't been playing that much. But obviously, do the whole activation bullshit, then upgrade your 11. I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm going to go for Canyon. I'm not a big fan of Racecourse. I just don't like the density that much, and I don't like the delays on the dogs coming out the side gates. I just don't really like it. I like the route. I like how linear it is. I just don't like the slight delay. Few people have recommended that Strand might actually still be pretty good for me with this build, just because of how well this build clears and you just run in a straight fucking line. But it has been hit pretty hard, so I'd probably go for something like Canyon. You could still go with Strand, but whatever. And then after that, I'm probably just going to go all the way up to like tier 15s. I'm not going to do the thing of just sitting in 11s for this build, just because I think with the current... oh, fucking hell, this map is terrible. With the current Atlas setup and the way that people are doing beachheads and stuff, I feel like you should just be doing your Atlas all the way up, and having that little bit of extra variety isn't as punishing now, since it isn't all about, oh, just do Strand for days. Now, obviously, if you're going for a full, like, we are taking sextant blocking very serious, blah, 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 then just clearing all the maps after a certain point becomes less effective. But it's something to consider for the more average player, since I think most people don't really try hard sextants too much. Like, they do a little bit, but they don't go full block crazy. So, yeah. And also, I'm in the advantage of I have friends who have got full sextant blocking. So I feel like doing that, I can just use their fucking Atlases, and feels good, man. Also, friends of the stream. If anyone remembers our good man, Kane. He used to hang out a lot on stream, but he hasn't been on stream that much voice-wise anyway, because he had a terrible microphone. A very generous viewer gave a fairly sizable donation to the stream the other day, and I took a tiny bit of money from that to buy Kane a new microphone. So we can look forward to having Kane on stream again. Again, don't PK me, Mr. I'm really paranoid of this boss after the death of my last character. I should just turn my blasphemy off. Should be fine. It's only one curse. There you go. So, yeah, that will hopefully be a nice thing. So there should be more stream bants once I can actually log back into my fucking Twitch account. Other than that, though, not too much to report. Now, I am open to suggestions topic-wise for the next Bay class coming up, which again will be on Saturday. And I'm waiting to hear back from both Cute Dog and Ziggity Diggity if they are available. I don't know why I shaped Wasteful. It was a terrible decision. Rise will definitely be there, so any regular Cute Doggy Dog or Ziggy viewers, nag them to see if they're available for Saturday. I'm in the process of also nagging them, but it's just one of those things people are terrible at checking their Skypes. So we might have some guests on, not sure yet. If we do have guests, I will keep you guys up to date. And if you haven't seen the last episode of Bay Class, then shame on you. It was very, very chilled, very entertaining. We had both Pox and Lifting on, and that was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed having those two guys on there together. There's something just really enjoyable about... I think we just decided that we just really didn't give a shit that last episode. Like, there was no pretense of talking about anything. So it was just very, very relaxed, very, very chill and laid back. And that's exactly what we had in mind when we first made Beta Classes. Like, we just want to have something we can kick back and just chill. And hopefully you guys would find it entertaining as well. So, yes, that was kind of that. But as you can see, I know we haven't really been doing anything fancy. We've just been bouncing between, like, tier 9s. The build's performing decently-ish well. And while it may not be the best in terms of raw damage, at least for the setup I have right now with, like, defensive curses, and I've been pretty lacking on my tree since I prioritized a bunch of traveling. I haven't filled in crit wheels, I haven't filled in a bunch of, like, raw damage wheels, etc. I'm missing, for example, the 3-point multi-wheel. I actually spec'd out of some AoE to spec back into Dual Curse, because I had to shuffle points to get to Volpact early, which again, as I mentioned when I first outlined this build, the main, like, weakness in quotation marks is you don't get Volpact until 75 or 80, depending on what you spec in and out of. So what I recommend you do is, while leveling, you just follow the tree normally, picking all the damage, picking all the crit, feels good, and then you actually start speccing out of some of that stuff. Just quickly re-heal it when face tank and pack low HP. You actually spec out of some of that stuff to then come down. So you can see that I actually spec'd out of this cluster, I spec'd out of this cluster, I spec'd out of Heart of Flame, just to fill this in. And now I'm just filling back into it since I'm only 84. So by like 90, you have everything back filled in. But there is this one slightly awkward transition where it's kind of like drop all of my damage nodes to get Vault packed. But as you can see, it's well worth it from a survivability point of view. Softcore players, you'd be fine, but hardcore players, it's kind of dumb to make a build based around face tanking through Leech and then not actually spec into the Leech, because that would just be silly. So, yes. I fucking hate this map. I think what happened when I shaped the Waste Pool was, for some reason in my head, I confused Waste Pool with, like, Arid. And I was like, yeah, Arid's a nice layout, let's shape that for my 9. Like, no one ever does 9s anyway once the Atlas is set up properly, so, like, whatever. And I just threw it on Waste Pool, and then I, like, did it, and I was like, hang on. Waste Pool's the shitty sewer layout. Fuck. Can I be bothered to change it? No, because no one runs fucking shaped tier 9s. But yeah, pro tip, pay some attention when you're shaping your things. Especially if you're just like, oh, I'm kind of tired. Should I double check which map it is? No, let's just throw it. Oh, no, wrong one. But so far, I am actually quite liking having the efficacy on the Vaal skill, and I think that's something which more people will be doing. We're in kind of like an awkward meta at the moment when it comes to like links. A lot of people like specking out, since everyone's going live, a lot of people losing slots on chest. People like using Combs boots. A lot of people like playing these builds with really like no links in them whatsoever. Could do another Reef quickly, then end up there. But if you do have a few things floating, I would highly recommend it. Also, there is the Immortal Cool trick with Arcane... Ooh, wrong one. With Arcane Surge, which if you don't know, self-cast Immortal Cool, increased duration. You proc it and you give yourself like a 20-30 second Arcane Surge. It's one of the things which is both kind of nice and kind of wank about having these shitty new support gems. I think they're a little bit iffy in the fact that I don't like having this situational power. I don't mind it so much when it's offensive. I don't like situational defensive buffs. But at the same time, it does make you think a little bit more about your setup. So in that case, it's pretty good. And there are some interesting things to come out of the new support gems. But yes. One other thing, just since I'm kind of rambling at this point. If anyone is interested in bow builds, Waggle made a pretty interesting Leech Space Slayer, which looks like a fair amount of fun. I'm always a big fan of Waggle's builds. He likes to do things which, like, he often plays things which is quite powerful, but he often, like, puts, like, an interesting little spin on them. And he's currently using the Untethered Belt, which is one of the new Harbinger belts, which gives increased life recovery. And that works on Slayer Leech. And he's using that in conjunction with Pantheon. I know, Pantheon giving actual real power, Ellie Jiggle. Where the buffed up Arakali node is if your degen damage has stopped recently. So like Blood Rage, Righteous Fire, etc. If you've stopped taking dot damage, you get 50% increased life recovery. So what he does is he runs a cast damage taken Immortal Cool, which procs it, since he runs Blood Rage on himself. And then that in conjunction with the belt gives him something crazy like 70% increased life recovery. And that increases it bypasses the leech cap. So because of that, you just get insane amounts of regen. And I'm thinking about maybe doing a similar build myself. Part of me kind of wants to incorporate Trickster, and maybe use a Worm Flask, because Trickster has a similar like super recovery of life if you've killed recently. And they also have all of the, like, get these charges if you've killed recently. So people are saying, well, you know, on bosses, you could run a Worm Flask. So you maintain all your buffs all the time. And then it's like, could you make some, like, crazy block regen build? Maybe go low life RF or something. And be walking around with, like, 120% increased life recovery. I don't know. I feel like there's an idea there which someone smarter than me will turn into a build at some point. But I am trying to think of I'm trying to think of, like, interesting builds. Like, this is a very enjoyable... Fucking hell, the density. Jesus Christ. This is very enjoyable to play, just in the fact that you don't have to, like, think that much. I always enjoyed Nova-style gameplay. But it's not mechanically that interesting of a build. And I have been thinking, it's been a while since I played a mechanically interesting character. So I am open to suggestions. But yeah, I don't know. Any cool ideas that you haven't seen done yet, or that you've seen other people do but feel like they could do with a little bit more tweaking, do let me know. But I'm going to finish it up there. And I will hopefully see you on stream in the next few days once I get back onto my Twitch account. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.